Having been a freelance musician my whole life, I've always been in this mindset of fluidity, to put it nicely, and then total lack of security on the negative side of things. And I think when you're in that freelance mode, you are constantly looking at, some days you've got 10 calls coming in for all kinds of jobs, and you're juggling things to keep everybody happy, and other days you're dialing your own phone to see if your phone still works because nobody's calling you. It's just part of being a freelance person. The other side of the music world is a steady job, which is a symphony orchestra. And the great thing about a symphony orchestra is it is steady, and you don't have to worry about if you're going to make your rent. You know what your situation is going to be. With all the economic volatility that's going on in American symphony orchestras right now, bankruptcy, work stoppages, strikes, tons of seasons are being shortened. I mean, in your neck of the woods, your former neck of the woods, Syracuse Symphony recently, declared bankruptcy. I believe they've resurfaced, I think, is in another entity, but
Symphony Syracuse.
Symphony Syracuse. So they're making a go of it, but it's changed, and it's certainly they've downsized economically, I'm sure. From your perspective, as obviously a very successful executive, do you have any thoughts on how organizations like the American Symphony Orchestras can improve their lot, and how they can do things that might give them a little bit more financial stability as we go forward?
Yeah, I think orchestras need to. I kind of want to address both issues if I can. But I think orchestras have had a hard time in the U.S. but for sort of the biggest orchestras that can record and tour and things like that, I think it's been a hard road. And part of it is, I think, because there needs to be maybe a better balancing of the business need of the orchestra as well as the musical need of the orchestra. Mm-hmm. And that may drive the way their season runs, or maybe their overall pay structures or something. I also think they could be much more creative on the revenue side and generate more revenues if they were a little more creative about things. Let me give you an example if I can.
Yeah,
Last May, Christian Limburg played a concert in Barcelona. And my son and my wife and I went to Barcelona to see the concert.
Oh, awesome. Great.
And one of the reasons we went is, as you know, much of what he does now is conduct. But at this concert, he was playing Mandrake in the Corner, which is a great piece he wrote, and the Leopold Mozart Concerto, two really great pieces, actually. And he was playing, so I thought, he rarely comes to the United States. Opportunity to take my son to Europe for the first time. Barcelona is a great city. Let's go have a great weekend.
Yeah, it's a great city.
So I contact the orchestra through the website, and I said, 6 months in advance. So I said, I want to come to this concert. And they said, that's great. They said, if you're interested, we have seats on the stage. And I said, really? So how does that work? And they said, well, you can sit right on the stage, and the seats are twice what they cost, like in the orchestra section. Uh-huh. But if you want that experience, we can do that. I said, absolutely. Like what? My son's playing violin. What better to have him sit next to the violins and watch what happens when you really play well? And so we get the tickets. We do the whole thing. We get to Barcelona. We go to the concert, and I show them our tickets, and they go, "Oh, come with me." And so they take us backstage. So the orchestra's getting ready. We're backstage, and everybody's taking out their instruments, warming up. Like, we shouldn't be here, right? And the woman who I talked to through the email comes up and says, "Oh, we're so glad you're here. Where do you want to sit on the stage?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, you can sit over here, you can sit over here. We have your 3 chairs, so you can put them wherever you want." And I realized at that point we were the only 3 people who weren't the orchestra that were going to be sitting on the stage. Wow. And so immediately I started thinking, oh my God, what if my son does something says something in the middle of things, or says, "Daddy, let's leave," or something, right? But he didn't. Okay. But anyway, we ended up sitting, on side of the orchestra, and what a spectacular experience for my son, what a spectacular experience for us. We actually walked out on stage with the orchestra. When the orchestra got up and left, we got up and left. And I told a friend of mine who's on the board of the Phoenix Symphony about this, and a light bulb went off in his head. He says, "Why don't we do that in Phoenix?" And that's an example of an orchestra that was very creative, they sold a product that they didn't even realize they had. And I think if orchestras are more creative about the revenue side, doing things like that, finding ways to engage the audience a little more, being more creative about both higher prices and lower prices based on supply and demand, I think they could do a lot better. Airlines are pretty good at that, about selling lower fares when time's not that good, but gouging customers when they can when they can. At least the big airlines do that. Spirit doesn't do that so much anymore. But I think orchestras could learn from that. And so you take a more business approach without sacrificing musicality. In fact, I think you could argue you could be a better musical organization when you relieve the organization of the business and financial pressures that are on most orchestras.
Wow, that is a great piece of advice. I mean, what an experience. I mean, you were obviously completely fired up, shared it with a friend of yours. Phoenix Symphony may be doing that. It could open up a myriad of possibilities. That's one example.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're thinking outside the box like that, it's great.
Yeah,
It's
it's just one example, but there's a lot. If you're willing to think creatively, it's amazing what you can come up with. And approaching what you do as a business, like the Mike Davis store, is the pathway to that. It's how do I think about making things different and differentiating my brand or differentiating what I do.
Wow, that right there is worth all of it. I mean, that is such great advice for all, especially music students, but all professionals. I mean, I think it's just really thank you for that, Ben. I think as musicians, we are really striving to find balance in ourselves as musicians. What we can do and different aspects of what you need to be balanced in terms of having success as a musician. When I read books and articles about successful business professionals, they seem to have found balance in their own life. And I think that's important for musicians to know that too. It's like it's not just about being musically balanced, it's about being life balanced. And you seem like you really have that. We haven't known each other that long, but you talk so warmly about your family and about playing the trombone and about football, and then you talk very passionately about business. It's great. You seem to have tremendous balance. How have you achieved that balance in your life? And then I'm kind of assuming that music has been a focal point within that balance.
Yeah, well, you're right about that. And I guess first of all, you have to want to have the balance. I once learned that. Or someone once told me that if you want something really done well, give it to someone who's really busy. and then their point was people who are busy have learned how to prioritize, and they've learned what they can afford to ignore for some period of time without a really bad consequence, and can keep their mind focused on what are the most important tasks at hand. I could go to work every day and check the stock price and make sure my shoes are shined and do all kinds of things. But what I need to do when I go to work every day are the things that are most leveraged for me in my role as CEO at Spirit that are going to help the company. And if I don't know what those are, then I'm not going to be well prioritized. And if I don't think about what those are, I'm not going to be as good a leader as I can be. I'm not going to lead my people as well, and the organization isn't going to be successful. So people have to want that balance. Another comment I'll share with you is I used to work for a boss who used to say, you have to make money and have fun. And he said, because if you're making money and not having fun, life just isn't worth it. But if you're having fun and not making money, it's not going to last long. And I thought that was pretty good advice, actually. And it gets to the whole balance of things. So I find that when I like to run, and when I run, I think about my job. Or I think about my trombone playing, or I think about my son, or I think about my wife or something. And if I have an orchestra or brass quintet rehearsal that evening while I'm at work, I'm even more dedicated through the day to make sure I get everything done in time so I can leave on time to make that rehearsal. And so I find that by doing different things, having a great relationship with a woman who's been my wife for 25 years, and having a son, and playing the horn, and participating in some things, and then running a company, every one of them is synergistic with the other. And if I over-focus on one too much, then my life really does get out of balance. But I find that using my trombone playing, using running, using other things, help my mind relax, help me work through problems that maybe I get stuck in other ways, and keeps me, I guess, on track to make sure I'm getting done what I need to get done so that I can participate in the next thing I'm going to go do.
Well said. Boy, that That's it. I don't need to. We could put that one to bed. Let's talk about stress for a minute. And I think we all deal with it in everyday life, and as musicians, obviously as a CEO. And obviously, the ability to handle that stress can make the difference between success and failure, no matter what you're doing. And whether you're a student auditioning for New England Conservatory, or auditioning for a symphony orchestra, or playing in front of thousands of people, or running a major multi-million-dollar corporation, stress is there every day. I'm sure you deal with stress very well, just in the way you talk about it, all the aspects of your job. How do you deal with it? How do you keep your head on straight when you're making decisions that, I'm trying to decide whether I should change the mute or not. You're trying to decide to make a decision that it's going to affect thousands of people's livelihoods here. So the level of stress is significantly higher, I would think. How do you approach stress, and how do you keep your head on straight when those decisions kind of elevate to that upper level?
I think it's really two principal things that help me deal with stress, at least. One is confidence, and the other is prioritization. So if you're confident in what you do, and you get confident in what you do by getting better at what you do, by understanding what it takes to be successful at whatever you're trying to be, right? Okay, so I'm not particularly good at lip trilling right now, but I'm working on it, okay? And I know that a year from now, I'm going to be a better lip triller than I am today, because every time I play, I get out my books and I work on the flexibility, and I'm going to be better, right? I'm not going to be better tomorrow, but I'm going to be better a year from now. And so if you know what it takes to be better at whatever you're trying to do, then and you build a plan to get better and to perform well at whatever it is you're doing, running a business, running a store, being an athlete, being a musician, then you build a confidence in yourself that you can do it. And I think that's a big way to help relieve stress, because if you can do it, you don't need to be as stressed about it. A lot of stress comes from, what if I fail? And if you have a better grounding in what it takes to be successful, and you've prepared yourself and done the work and worked through the minute details to get better at whatever it is, your risk of failing goes down to almost nothing, so you feel better about it. The other thing I think is prioritization, is knowing what's important to do and what's not important. And I know this is similar to what I said a few minutes ago, but I think it's very important to approach your day, or approach your next hour, or approach your week, or whatever, with a sense of what you're trying to accomplish and what's most important for you to accomplish. And prioritization, I think, can be defined as the act of knowing what you can ignore, right? Because there's so much you can do, but just because you can do something doesn't mean it's the most leveraged thing for you to do. So for whatever you're trying to accomplish, if you're confident enough in your skills because you've dedicated yourself to be better, and you know what you're working on are the most important things for you to be able to get better. Now, probably lip trills aren't the most important thing for me to work on, actually. But
you'd be surprised what lip trills can do for you, Ben.
maybe I need better breath control first. I don't know, but knowing those two things, I think that's what eliminates stress. Because stress comes from thinking you're going to fail, and you're going to think you're going to fail if you've forgotten to do something, or you've left something behind, or you think you might fail if you don't have the confidence that you can actually get it done.
Yeah.
So be prepared and prioritize well, and stress will go down.
Yeah. Yeah, well said again. Okay, on a lighter note, give me your 3 favorite airlines. You can include Spirit, and your 3 favorite airports.
Okay, well, I think for favorite airline, you got to think about what they do. So I'm going to limit it to more of the United States, because when you travel really long haul internationally, you want to be in a real nice airplane if you can do that. But I think domestically in the U.S., I know it's biased, but nobody beats Spirit on price. So if you're going for price, Spirit is my favorite airline. If you're going for network and scope, and I go anywhere I want, I'd pick Delta. I think Delta's put together a great route network. I think they run a really good airline, and they can get you everywhere around the world, and anywhere you want to go, almost every continent. And I think they're great. And if you want just, really good, simple product, I think JetBlue's great. I think JetBlue does a nice job. You can watch TV, you can have legroom. You're going to pay a little more than you are on Spirit, but you're gonna have that comfort. So I think it's really what you're looking for. And network Delta, product JetBlue, price Spirit.
Cool. And how about your three airports?
Airports, I love Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. I don't know if you're familiar with that airport.
Sure, yeah.
But it's a great little airport with super concessions. You can be at a meeting downtown and say, oh, my flight's in an hour, I got to go, and still make the flight. It's terrific. I love JFK, and that's going to sound crazy if any New Yorkers are listening. But
it certainly does to me, but go ahead, I'll let you finish.
The thing I love about JFK, that's the airline geek in me that loves JFK, because you see the world at JFK.
Yeah, that is true.
And you see airlines from all over the world, and you see people from all over the world, and you hear languages that you didn't even know existed. And if you're a citizen of the world and you're interested in the world, you can go to the world by just going to JFK. Mm-hmm. I think it's amazing. And I would say the third airport I like is probably Miami, for the exact same reason, but it's a different set of airplanes and a different set of people and a different set of just, you're really in another country when you're in Miami Airport.
That's
and you
cool.
can do all that all within the confines of the 48 states.
And I noticed you didn't put LaGuardia in there. I'm assuming that's because it sucks.
Well, Spirit's a gate B6 in LaGuardia, if I can do a plug, okay?
That was me talking, not Ben, about LaGuardia. Just kidding about LaGuardia. Well, I really love going to San Francisco Airport. I'm from San Francisco, so every time I go there, I love it. But I love the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame, and it's really cool. They got everybody who's played there and had success,
That's
but then everybody
cool.
who grew up there, so it's kind of a cool thing. But anyway, that's a fun thing. Okay, here's another slightly lighter side of things. You know this. As a trombone player, whenever I fly, I'm like anxiety-ridden before I get on the plane because I'm wondering, am I going to get my trombone in the overhead? And and then you do get on and you do get your trombone in the overhead, and then you got to worry about people smashing stuff in there, and so those Shire's horns are expensive, and we got to be careful with those things. Anyway, I love your video that you did when you're in the overhead. So those of you who haven't seen it, check out Ben Baldanza overhead bin or whatever you would look up, or just Spirit Airlines. It's great, and he's actually in an overhead bin. How do you deal with the fear of getting your horn on and getting it in the overhead?
Well, airline carrying things on an airplane can create that kind of stress for sure. Clearly, got to have a good case. So get a good case. I have a Glenn Cronkite case for my horn. I don't know if that's good enough.
There you go.
But
That's
I love
a quality case.
You got to carry it on, and if the airline's not going to let you carry it on, you should fly another airline. I think.
Wow. Okay.
No, seriously, because I don't think you want to check an instrument of that kind of value. And
yeah, for sure.
Baggage gets treated as baggage, and they can put whatever tags they want on it. But this industry just isn't that good at differentiating. That's an expensive trombone. I don't know if you remember. A couple of years ago, there was a guitar player who had his guitar damaged on United Airlines, and he wrote this song about it. I mean, that's an example. I don't think you want that to happen. You don't want to have to write your next piece about how your horn got damaged on an airline. The other thing I would consider, and I know this may sound crazy, but you might want to just ship it FedEx.
Yeah.
FedEx does a fantastic job. You can track it the whole way. It'll go there overnight. So just have it delivered to your hotel or wherever you're going. It'll be there, and it'll be fine. And if for any reason they damage it, they'll get you a new one.
Get you a new one.
Right? So that might be the best option.
Yeah, well, that's a good piece of advice.
Can't play on the airplane. But.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the other people on the airplane will be glad to hear that. Hey, listen, Ben, this has been so awesome, and I really appreciate you being our first Bone2Pick Biz guest, and you've given us a lot of great information, much better. I had really high expectations, and you exceeded them. It's been great. Just one last question. If you had a single piece of advice that you could give to anybody, whether they're going to be a musician or a business person or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever they aspire to do, if you could break it down to one thing that you feel would be the most important element for them to have success, what piece of advice would you give?
Well, here's what I'd say. A lot of people have said, do what you love and follow your passion, and that's what you should do. I actually think that's an emotional kind of thing, but it's not a really pragmatic thing. I think what you have to do is decide two things. You got to decide what do you really love to do, and what kind of life do you really want to live? Are you comfortable with the instability of a freelancer? Or does the stability of a teaching job or something like that mean more important to you? Are you willing to dedicate, huge hours in your day and many, many years at something? Or do you want a better balance right up front of what you consider fun and what you consider work? And if you think about what you're passionate about doing, but also what you're passionate about as a way of life, and then I think you can more realistically come up with a plan for your life or a plan for your career that really balances those two things well. And that's kind of what I did in a sense. I realized that and maybe this makes me, this is one of the reasons I never should have been a musician, is I didn't know that I had it in me to do what I needed to do to be successful, and whether I was willing to do all that and what it would mean for me day-to-day living to do that. And so I said, well, I'll make it an avocation, and I'll still try to get better, and I'll still try to get good, but I'm going to balance that with also having a really good life as well. And for me, that's worked well. And so following your passion is something a lot of people have said, and that's important, but you got to balance that with having a pragmatic understanding of what kind of life you're willing to live. And are you willing to live with other people for a while? Are you willing to wait for a long while before you have kids? Because kids are a huge financial responsibility,
sure,
right? And things. And you got to decide those things as part of your plan of what you want to do, and you'll come up with a better overall plan.
Wow, I mean, that could be directed so much at music students. I mean, that is everything you said right there is something that every person considering a career in music should really weigh very seriously. So, Ben, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
So much,
it's
Michael.
been great. Thank you. You are so busy, and your willingness to take time out to talk with us today has just been great. So thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoyed our inaugural Bone2Pick Biz. I just had a great time. This is like tremendous information. I'm looking forward to listening back and applying everything myself. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and we will look forward to seeing you next time on Bone2Pick.